If you thought I was going to show you guys how tracing would help you draw better, you can leave the video now because I'm already Tracer.
Tracer here.
Just kidding, guys. Hey, this is Ergo Josh, and since today is the last day of 2018, I think it's fair to say that I'm going to teach all of you to be Tracer today so that we can finally lay that meme to rest before we go into 2019. So this is a follow-up video to my Draw Faces Easily video, as you can see. This was the thumbnail for it. And I'm going to tell you what I said I would tell you in that video, which is how to start seeing shapes well, how to start seeing it easily. But if you haven't seen the video, please check it out. It will be linked in the description below, and there should be a card up here in the top right corner. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back to this video. So at the end of that video, I promised a way to help you guys start seeing shapes easily, and that way is by tracing.
Whoa!
Now, I know you guys are probably already freaking out when you hear that, or if you're not already from looking at the title and thumbnail, but yes, I did say tracing. I know it's a taboo topic, but it's really something that I think can help you guys accelerate your drawing skill pretty quickly if you do it in the right way. But I wanted to help you guys understand where I'm coming from by starting with some of the things that I did to help myself learn how to draw faces, how to understand the anatomy and all of that stuff. And the first thing that I really looked into a few years ago was the Loomis method. And you know, it's the circle, dividing it up into different portions and different things like that. And then I combined it with some of the other things that I've learned that I'll show you in the next couple slides. So you can see here, I was trying to prove myself, or, you know, validate the Loomis method by actually tracing it onto an image. I got a little bit excited and I drew some of the rest of the neck. But yeah, these are the basic parts of the Loomis method, the measurements, the different lines that correspond to different parts of the face, things like that. Then I went into the golden ratio. And that's something that I've learned a lot. I discovered through my architecture background, and there's actually kind of a golden ratio diagram for the face. And if you look around online, you'll see there are photos where people will overlay these two diagrams onto some of the most attractive people in the world, celebrities, some people with the most ideal faces, and you'll see that their faces actually match these pretty well. So with these diagrams, I then moved on to tracing them onto faces again. And here, the goal was to prove it again to myself and try to distill the complexities of this crazy diagram and find out what was most important. And here I was looking at Gal Gadot, which is another individual who has very, very close to ideal facial features that are a good starting point to learn from. Not everyone is going to have the ideal facial features, but it's a good place to start from because then you can start to play with things, and we'll get into more of that later on in the video. So you can see, if I swipe again, that's kind of where I started messing with it a lot, adding some more details. I was getting into a little bit of the Riley method. By getting in that, the Riley method helps a lot with the facial features themselves. And I kind of stumbled onto that, and I was using it a lot to help my studies along. But then eventually I kind of got tired of, you know, drawing this complex diagram every time I wanted to draw a face. Like, this stuff can get tiring, and it's not going to help you become an artist that can perform. If you want to be an animator, you know, you need to be able to draw things quickly and not rely on these complex diagrams. So I started to break it down. And when I broke it down, I looked at this kind of mask shape that took the most important features, in my opinion, for the face and helped me understand them. So I did a lot of these studies where I would trace them onto people. And even this is more complex than what I do now, but it gives you a basic idea of how I would go about taking the planes of the face and using them to help me understand the perspective. If you look at my drawings now, you'll notice that I just draw the shape of the head. I take this kind of trapezoid shape and then this triangle shape, and I don't really do too much with those unless I'm going into more detail with the facial features. And then here are some images. I think I may include them on my Gumroad. These were pretty difficult to create. I did purchase this 3D model, but then I used my own skills to render it in like the most ideal lighting to convey the planes and to expose everything properly. And so these are at different angles that I thought were the most important angles, looking at a head straight on, going in 15-degree increments. And I used those to create a lot of different diagrams that I don't have here today, but I think I'll try and find them and hunt them down to use them in a later video or something like that. But the goal with all of this tracing is thinking with awareness that you're not drawing line by line. I was looking for something that didn't exist. And so when you do that, your brain doesn't exactly know, if you're tracing or not. It just knows, hey, I'm looking for a shape and I'm drawing it. And when you learn to find these shapes and diagrams on people without actually tracing those specific lines, like if you can take an image and draw this onto it without any other reference, you're practicing and strengthening neural pathways that can help you start to think in 3D instead of just 2D images. Being able to do this also helps. It helps to be able to have a 3D background working in polygonal modeling as well. But if you study the Loomis method, then you begin to trace it onto images, prove it to yourself. That helps you a lot and it helps you learn. But I'm here today to show you that you can use kind of like an even more basic version of my mask method and use that to help you see shapes and then really start getting nice drawings without having to spend all this time struggling with these complex diagrams like these. I just wanted to take the complexity and break it down for you guys. And so let's get into that. So in this video, I'm taking a photo of Stefanie Joosten, one of my favorite actresses, and I'm going to draw a basic diagram onto her face. I think I'm going to use one of these two. I'm drawn to these more than this one. This is a special tip. When you're looking at photo references to study from, try to stay away from selfies or very close-up images of the face because the distortion is going to be a lot. The camera lens does distort the face, and it will take some time for you to be able to notice that. So it's best to use images where the face is relatively small, especially this one. There's almost no distortion in the face here. So yeah, I'm going to take a picture of Stefanie Joosten and I'm going to draw my diagram over it to kind of get an idea for how her face works and, a face in general and where the anatomy kind of plays true. And then I'm going to take one of my favorite artists, Ross Draws, and then I'm going to trace over his art. And the idea with that is to understand how he uses shapes to create a very aesthetic picture. He's very strong with his style, and I think that he has very consistent shape language that will be really effective. That has always been effective for me to study and is effective for probably most people to be able to study. There are a lot of other artists, but I just like Ross Draws, so I'm going to pick him. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to basically combine one of these images with the study that I do from Ross Draws, and I'm just going to draw it myself and show you guys the power of just using shapes to quickly draw a face and kind of prove to you guys that this works. I haven't drawn this picture before yet, so when I do that, it's going to be the first time I do it, and we're both going to see if this works.
Time's up.
Guys, I almost forgot. This video is probably, as you noticed, is a longer video, so I encourage you guys to watch it through first and then follow along with your own references, with your own favorite artist, and then try to do these same activities yourself. And then you'll find that it's going to be a much more beneficial video for you and you're going to learn a lot. I'm really confident that this is going to help a lot of you, especially with the feedback I got from the last video. So I'm going to create a new canvas and just import that picture of Stefanie Joosten that I want to use. Let me see. I'm going to start with this one. And just going to increase the size. I'm tracing, guys. It's so bad. But yeah, okay. So I pick my pencil eraser brush. And so now this is basically what I do when I draw, even without reference. So I'm drawing on the same layer here. So the goal here is to look at the face and to draw what I know is there and to look for shapes that I know to be very key when you're drawing a human face. I'm not tracing lines. I'm not looking for, you're not thinking mindlessly. I'm looking for shapes. I'm looking for things that I know exist from my studies, because it's one thing to study something and it's something else to be able to apply it. And so if you can be able to apply what you've studied in a correct fashion, so here I'm basically drawing with 100% accuracy, but I'm not really drawing it, but my brain doesn't know the difference because brain doesn't need to know the difference. There have been studies where basketball players, if they can kind of imagine playing a game, their brain can't really tell the difference. So a basketball player can still practice if he's on the bus by imagining the base basketball game instead of just, chilling out and relaxing. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm not tracing lines, because if you do that, if I were to do this, and think that, okay, yeah, I'm learning. No, you're not learning doing stuff like this. You're just mindlessly copying lines. The goal here is to know something and then begin to apply it in the 100% correct fashion, so that your brain knows, okay, so I've done it before perfectly, so that when you try to do it again, you actually have a neural pathway to rely on, rather than, just shooting in the dark. So I'm just continuing here, taking a little bit of a long time to do this, because it's tricky when you're doing a tracing for a real person, because I'm still trying to make it diagrammatic, and I don't want to focus too much on making it exactly fit her head shape. If you're wondering, a lot of you ask a lot, like, why do you flip the canvas so much? And it's because my best stroke is like this, and I like to just emphasize doing that stroke as best as I can to make my lines look better. If I'm going to draw a stroke, I don't really want to struggle with it and then have a bad looking line. So I think this is pretty much it. So if I hide that layer, you can see this shape. And some of you are at the skill level where you can see that, and you can see, oh yeah, that looks like a pretty convincing face shape. That looks pretty aesthetic. If this looks just normal to you, as you go do these activities, you'll begin to see, like, if you try to draw this now, just stop and try to draw it. It probably won't look very good compared to this, because either you haven't traced it or you're not as good at seeing a good hierarchy and balance of proportions. But doing this over and over with more complex studies that I showed before will really help you begin to start seeing those things. What I also like to do is go into more detail with the features. So I may or may not include this in the final video, because I really don't want this to be super long. But the shapes I'm tracing here, I might do in another video, but they're a little bit different. These are just basic shapes for the anatomy of, the eyes, the nose, the lips, things like that. And these can also be broken down, but it's really best to start with what eyes look like, how to draw eyes before you start doing things like this, because you're going to start looking at the lines and tracing the lines, and that won't really help you. You want to know the anatomy, know what an eye basically is shaped like. You want to know an eye is traditionally represented as a trapezoid on top with a triangle, a scalene triangle on the bottom. You want to know that by studying the anatomy of an eye, then start doing stuff like this. Same thing with the nose. One of my most inspiring artists when I was studying how to draw faces was Gabrielle Bricky, and she has done excellent video on breaking down the shape of a nose, and that's pretty much what I'm doing here, breaking it down into a triangle. And a lot of times there'll be a second triangle, but it's kind of hard to show here since this is a real human face, instead of just a stylized drawing of a character. But I also like to do this because one thing that I notice a lot is the line from this kind of eyebrow shape always corresponds with the edge of the mouth here. So basically we're drawing a diagram, and we're not tracing lines here. Actually, I started getting into tracing a little bit. So you can see even that you can get easily distracted as I just did right there. But I'm going off of memory of what I know for the golden ratio and perspective. And I'm drawing this shape right now. Basically, the bottom lip is usually just a triangle. Top lip is, you don't even need to add this detail to really learn how to place it properly, like that. And yeah, then you can sometimes add the flesh if you want. That's depending on the character. But yeah. So you can kind of see why I call this a mask shape. A lot of sci-fi masks do have this kind of look to them. So you can see here, like, I think most of you could tell that this looks like, you know, a convincing face shape. But I want to discourage you guys from doing something like this and then thinking that, okay, I can look at the picture now and start drawing it, and you know, I've got a cool drawing. Yay. No, this is just a diagram for you to look at. It's not for you to it's for you to do and practice and study. It's not a base by any means. You don't go in and fill this out because this is still not going to help you learn at that point. You just do this as an exercise. Now, if you could again draw it next to it and do that, then you are kind of learning something, because now you've learned to break down things into shapes. You've learned that things, your mouth, you know, people draw mouths over here sometimes, people draw the eye like this sometimes, but now that you know about these guidelines and this kind of basic shape, you're going to make that mistake less. And when you're struggling with your art, you can say, hey, wait, I remember ago Josh said, you know, you can break it down into a mask and draw this triangle, and you'll be able to do that. I've done it myself, and you'll be able to kind of pull yourself back and get a good looking drawing again. So now I'm going to go into the Rossdraws example, and we're going to look at how he took this kind of basic diagram and how he creates these amazingly appealing characters with his own art. So now we have Ross in the picture, and Rossdraws is a fantastic artist. I will have him linked in the description if you don't know who he is, but he is one of my most inspirational artists, and I love his work. So, and I also feel like, you know, his really strong shape language and character style is going to be effective for everyone else in this video. So personally with Rossdraws, what I found is the way he breaks down the shape of a head is extremely helpful. Like, he breaks it down into such a simple aesthetic egg shape. Like, this is just something you really want to learn as fast as possible, how to draw these aesthetic looking egg shapes, because they're key to how the head is shaped. Like, if you look at it now when I hide it, you know, it's hard to explain why that's just a good shape. It's really hard to explain, but you'll kind of get the feel for it the more art you look at and the more art you study in this way. You really want to just look at overall shapes and why this works well, like how she's looking forward with the head slanted, how her body's moving like that. It just makes for a very effective work of art. And even now, again, I feel like I've been tracing a little bit too much. I don't need to round that chin, because we're really looking at what is the big idea of this. We're not trying to get too much into the details here. With the mask, I'm going to kind of estimate, since the flow of the eyebrows like that, I'm going to think it's right there. And with here, what I notice with a lot of characters, where in reality, the mask shape is usually straight, more straight, you can bend it a little bit, depending on the character that you're drawing. So here you can see that Ross has bent this kind of mask shape quite a bit. And that's one of the things that I began to learn as I studied different artists, like, okay, you can really bend this, you can really make this into a V shape here, and kind of tailor it to your own characters without creating something that just doesn't look good and isn't attractive to anyone, and nobody would want to buy your artwork. But you can see that the same basic shapes apply. You can bring this down to the tip of the chin, and what do you know? You know, the corner of the mouth ends up right at the corner of that line, just like it did with Stefani Justin, which is a regular human being. And so that looks like it's a rule that you should try to continue to follow with your own artwork. Again, you can look at his eye. I could say that, oh, I'm going to start tracing his eye like this and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm learning. No, you're not learning. Again, you want to look at the basic shape. So what has he done? Well, a typical eye is broken into this trapezoid shape again, and then a scalene triangle for the bottom. But he's decided that he's going to break it down at this angle into a basic triangle on top and then a triangle on the bottom. So you get this diamond rhombus shape. And that's how he represents his eyes. And as you can see here, when it's at a very extreme angle like that, you can just represent it as one angle here. Sometimes you will see a corner of the eye like that. And that's how you begin to think in 3D. You can think of this having kind of a fold here, like this. And so we're doing that, and then we're learning, we hide the image, and we're like, okay, that's kind of the idea. That's the flow of where this face should have its eyes, you know. That's kind of the proportion of the face to the whole entire shape of the head. For me personally, I would have had the head like this. He probably did as well, and then it's really the hair that gives it the rest of that shape. But looking at it as an entire shape is still important because it makes your overall drawing much more appealing subconsciously to people. So if we keep going, you can see that he breaks the nose down again into this basic triangle shape. And it's a little bit more realistic this time because he adds quite a bit of this wing to the nose, whereas some artists, they just let it just exist as like some tiny thing over there. You'll see that in a lot of anime styles. And then we can go here and we can look at how did he break up the lips. So he made this curve, but it still really applies the same way. In reality right now, this is at such an extreme angle that if we're going back behind the lip, that's where the other side of the trapezoid is. But we're not going to draw that because we can't see it. We just want to focus on what we can see. We can see again, the bottom lip is represented in this triangle. And we can do this, just cut it off. But again, you always want to think in 3D and really be aware that this kind of corner is also probably around here if we go around the face. And I can hide everything, and you can see like this is kind of an idea of the basic diagram of the face shapes that he's using, the proportion to them, the flow of the cheekbone, where they align with the corner of the eye, and where this would be your cheekbone and stuff. Like, you don't really have to spend so much time remembering those details and repeatedly drawing them. You need to know them, know how to find them, and then abstract them so that you can draw quickly and effectively when you need to, especially if you want to be an animator. I keep saying that because those people, you know, you need to be able to draw quickly and accurately all the time because you're going to be drawing something over and over and over at different angles. And again, this is a cheat. Basically, think of this as like a cheat sheet. If you're still not sure how to do this kind of study and not have it be just something boring that you copy and you don't feel like you learn, think of it like a cheat sheet that you make for a test. So you can study and make this crib sheet and write really small in this little note card that you have that you're going to bring to class. But the thing is here, when you do that cheat sheet, when you filled that whole entire sheet of paper up with all this really dense, important information, you leave it at home. And because you made that cheat sheet, the way you perform on the test is going to be way better as if you just studied in a normal way, because you've already forced your brain to focus on this dense set of knowledge. And now you've had it, you've memorized it, and you found that, you know, how many of us have found that when we do bring that cheat sheet to class, when the teacher says, oh, you can bring a note card or whatever you can write on the front and back, you don't even look at it because you've already memorized it without knowing, because you've just spent so much time cultivating that. So that's what we're doing here. We're creating a cheat sheet for ourselves in our brain. And then when we go back to draw, we don't really need it. We don't need to go back and, do the Loomis method and split it up and then try to construct something for our face. We don't need to do that. We don't need to come back here and see, well, what did Ross do again? You just need to, casually glance at it if you're studying, or then later on when you've done it so many times, you're like, oh yeah, I know what to do. I know I can tweak this here or do that to make it a younger looking character because I've studied what other people have done to abstract different parts of the face to make them younger. You can see with my Disney video that you can use those kind of ideas, those kind of cues to make your characters cuter. If you really want to have fun with this, you can draw on more animals and figure out, well, there's something about this animal I want to figure out and see if I can apply it to my own characters. You can really take this and really create a wealth of knowledge for yourself in your brain, and then be able to bring that into your artwork and be relaxed about it and have fun with it. So now I'm going to draw something, kind of a combination of both of these. I'm going to take I'm going to take the same reference of Stefani Joosten, but I'm going to use the shapes that Ross has had in his drawing, and use that to kind of guide me. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the opacity of these. I'm going to merge them, and then I'm going to take this reference image, bring up the opacity here, and then I'm going to go ahead and have them kind of side by side so that I can draw my own version and prove to you guys, not really necessarily prove, but show you guys how this would work when you're doing your own studies. Because if you do what I've told you here today, like let's say you take one artist and you take 3 images that he's drawn, you take a few different pictures of the same person and you do the same thing, you're going to have a headache, you're going to be tired, and you're going to be like, whoa, I'm super tired, I don't know if this is worth it. But when you're tired like that, all it means is that you've learned a lot and your brain is like, almost overloaded, and that's how you want to feel when you do your drawing studies. So I think I'm going to go into time lapse here, and I may talk over this, but I'm going to basically, draw Stefani Joosten in Ross Draw style. So I will see you in the time lapse and after the time lapse, and I will come back and tell you guys basically why, again, tracing is 100% not holistically wrong, and encourage you guys with some different content that you can use to accelerate your own studies. So I've spent about 50 minutes real time on this drawing, and I wanted to give you guys some kind of a recap and some advice about tracing going on in the future. So the goal with this was to show you guys that you can use kind of this mask method of drawing triangles and just basically drawing what you've learned in your other studies, like if you're studying the Loomis method or if you're studying Riley's method, you can trace what you've learned onto images to help your brain learn it much more concrete and actually learn the correct version. I say somebody who traces the Loomis method onto 10 faces and draws 10 faces freehand will learn way more than the same person who draws 20 faces freehand, because that person who traces 10 faces with the Loomis method onto it will actually have a good foundation of what's correct, and his brain or her brain will be able to make comparisons and be able to learn what's actually correct and what looks good and what isn't correct, because developing that drawing eye is actually a very difficult thing to do, and it takes time, and artists can find themselves wasting a lot of time if they're not careful when they're trying to study. And when it comes to tracing, it's not as bad as you think. Like, tracing in and of itself is not plagiarism. Plagiarism is usually what people are thinking of when they hear tracing, especially when it comes to art. When you trace someone's art and you post it as your own, that's plagiarism. That's not acceptable. That's not okay at all. No matter, it really isn't good even if you edit it a little bit. But if you're tracing something as a study, like I have done here, I'm not going to post this. I'm not going to post what I did here. But this is a freehand drawing I did after the study of this image. So that's fine. I can post this, right? This is what I want you guys to do. I don't want you to take this and like draw over it as a base. No, that's not going to help you. I want you to actually learn and study and then be able to create your own artwork as a result of that. That's really going to help you moving forward. And even like in my case, if you do decide to post something and say, oh, it's a study, make sure you give ample credit to whoever owns the artwork that you're looking at. Like, I'm definitely going to link Ross Draws in like first thing in the description for this video. And the artists that I referenced, the other artists that I referenced in the video are referenced immediately, and they'll be referenced in the description as well with links to their social media or wherever they post their work. It should always be mindful and make it clear that you're always just trying to share either your own work or promote other artists if that's what you're doing, and share their own work if you're using them to help you kind of understand things and show other people anything that you want to teach them or anything that you've discovered. Especially in this kind of day and age where being copyright striked and stuff like that is a very serious issue that looms over us here on YouTube. So even if you aren't in the wrong, it can still happen if you're not careful. So I just want to warn all of you with that. And then also, some artists do actually state that they don't want their art manipulated in any way. Some artists don't even want their arts redrawn, and they usually make that very clear. So just look out for that as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe. I know it's easy to forget, but I will be continuing to do a lot more videos with this. I thought of so many more videos to write after I was scripting this video, and I'm sure a lot of you will have questions about this and different things, and if you do, please leave them in the comments. I look at every single one, and it really helps me to improve and gives me ideas on what to do moving forward. And I'm also thinking about like getting really into depth and like sharing all of the content that I kind of created for myself to help me learn to draw. And I will be doing that probably through my Patreon as first thing. So if you want, you can subscribe to my Patreon as well. Right now, the only tier I have is very small, just for people who want to support me and then get a chance for a free drawing of anyone they want every week. And then, but the most important thing is, I hope I changed your mindset on tracing. I hope you guys really feel empowered and are ready to get out there. If you've made it this far, I hope you are excited to get out your own iPad or sheet of paper and pencils or paint brushes or whatever, and to just go at trying this on your own and, you know, studying and having fun looking at what other people have done, because I don't think art has to be excluded from how math and science works, because, you know, we stand on the shoulders of the giants before us in those subjects, so why not here? I don't remember who said it, but it's a famous quote that, you know, good artists copy, great artists steal. And I completely believe in that. And I think a lot of us aren't utilizing that reality as much as we should. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a fantastic end to 2018. I will be back fired up and ready in 2019, and I hope you guys are willing to come along for the ride. I can't wait to see what this channel will grow into. You guys are amazing. I did not expect to reach 10,000 subscribers this year so fast at the very end, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.